Get switched on! We gotta move now!
Medal 01. Russian forces are making their way towards the Statue of Liberty. You have to beat them there. You don't want to know what they're going to do to that thing.
Ah! We gotta get to the Statue of Liberty! We gotta beat the Russians there!
Multiple voices. Alleyway. Frost, toss a 9-banger.
Hey guys, Kit Creep here, reporting to you live from New York City. The Russians are doing unspeakable things to the Statue of Liberty. Hey guys, Kit Creep here. What happened to video games? They used to look so cool. So cool, in fact, that older COD and Battlefield titles influenced a whole generation of guys to enlist, get heavily into airsoft or milsim, or just become completely obsessed with collecting guns and gear. Video games used to mean something. The video games that I played growing up were influential. They impacted the lives of their players. You know, we can credit games like the original Modern Warfare series or Battlefield 3 and 4 for bringing a lot of newer and younger members to the Second Amendment community. These games also helped the airsoft community grow globally into the behemoth that it is today. These games were so cool that they made their players actually want to get off the Xbox and go play them outside IRL and touch some grass. However, it feels like modern games just don't seem to have that impact on their players that these older games do. The Call of Duties and Battlefields of today just don't have that cool guy factor that the older games had. And I'm looking at you, Battlefield 6. I am so disappointed by how that game turned out. I mean, the guns look amazing, but the kit, it's horrible. Even some of the more realistic kit, it's just run-of-the-mill USGI stuff, nothing super interesting. And it's not even like a cohesive kit that is like based off of, you know, a certain unit. And you know what I'm talking about. Modern shooters just seem to have more and more like fictional gear when they have access to more reference photos in 4K than ever before. And almost every US Special Forces unit has a Facebook page that you can go to and you can replicate their kit from there. So why is it that the kits are becoming less and less realistic and having more neon colored fictional gear? I just feel like there's no excuses. But there is a really good video on YouTube by a channel called Fenric, and he gets really in depth into explaining all of the legal reasons why game developers have not been exactly copying kit. So it's pretty unfortunate. I'm not going to get too in depth into it because he does a really good job of explaining it. Definitely check that video out. But the reason why guns and gear in video games today are just a little off from the real life counterparts, and the reason why they always have some weird, wacky name is essentially because everyone's afraid of getting sued, per usual. You know, just look at what happened to Bushmaster. You know, my introduction into the Second Amendment community was from researching games like the original Modern Warfare series or Battlefield and seeing the real world counterparts of these guns on Forgotten Weapons or FPS Russia, and then going and watching an airsofter do a kit impression of one of my favorite fictional characters from a video game, using the replica of their guns and then going out and playing video games in real life. It literally changed my life. And naturally, I evolved from wanting to look like fictional characters from my favorite games like, you know, Ghost or Captain Price or even Sam Fisher from Splinter Cell to appreciating legit kit and wanting to look like actual US Special Forces units. So after learning so much about tactical gear and just becoming a total geardo and a certified kit creep, my relationship with video games has changed a bit. You know, I have a sweet tooth for realism and authenticity that wasn't always there. Now, of course, video games need to look cool in order to make them appealing to a broader audience, but the most exciting thing for me to see in a video game is when game developers are able to not only make their games look cool, but also authentic. Seeing developers go above and beyond just using standard GI gear or just some weird airsoft quality stuff and do some real research and use some niche cool guy gear is always cool to me. Even if the gunplay in a video game isn't as realistic as something like Ready or Not, Squad, or Arma, just the added realism of the environment around me feeling a little more realistic, the characters and the people around me makes it feel more grounded in reality and makes me feel more connected to the era or the conflict that it's based on. And honestly, it's for this reason that I still find myself playing video games that are over a decade old at this point. Games like Battlefield 4, which still has servers, thank God. COD 4, MW2, MW3. And the coolest part about these games is that they're almost like a time capsule for once modern gear. And games like this made me realize that I could actually own the things that I was playing with in the game. And I could get off the screen, go out into the real world and play with them with my friends, playing airsoft or just going to the range. And then all this time later, I'm still coming back and playing these same games. Now, after learning so much about gear and going back and still playing these older games, I start recognizing more and more gear that the characters in the games I grew up with are wearing. Now, we all know Modern Warfare 2 has some of the coolest looking character models, but Modern Warfare 3 continues to impress me to this day with some of the niche cool guy gear and artistic choices that they made by balancing authenticity and flair. And I realized that I actually owned most of the gear that it seems like Delta Force is wearing in the game. So that's why today we are looking at my Modern Warfare 3 Delta Force kit. Modern Warfare 3 is really cool because it's one of the first games that I remember actually having like brands in it. You know, the Oakley gloves had the big old O on them. Remington was unapologetically etched on the sides of guns, and having that kind of realism in the game made me want to actually research a lot of these products. You know, seeing the history, the development, and use case of everything and where the developers actually got their inspirations from made me feel a much deeper connection to this game and its contents. You know, these games feel like a timeless archive of guns and gear, rather than just another battle pass cash grab disguised as a flashy arena shooter. Now, the thing is, Call of Duty isn't really known for accuracy. So yeah, the Rangers look like Rangers, but they're not always wearing the things that Rangers were actually using during a certain time period. And the same thing goes for Delta Force in Modern Warfare 3. The gear is a little impressionistic, and it's kind of left to interpretation. You know, the more I was staring at some blurry still images from the game, and the more I researched real-world products, as well as actual Delta Force reference photos, the more it felt like a Rorschach test. So it was less of what it might actually be, and more of what I wanted it to be. You know, after a certain point, all green plate carriers start to look the same. Individual pouches just kind of look more like a suggestion rather than a one-to-one copy of a real product. You know, and also developers tend to blend different products or even different generations of a product into one model. And this is either because they didn't know any better or just because they thought it was cooler the way that they did it. So if you watch this and you think that, you know, what I'm showing you might be different from what it might actually be, you could be right. So this is really just my interpretation of what Delta Force in the game is wearing using predominantly legit kit. There's only about 2 or 3 pieces of repro gear on this kit that I'm wearing, and I have good reasons for that. But the whole point of this is I'm not using a bunch of cheap Chinese airsoft repro gear. So I wanted to make this as cohesive and authentic as possible using mostly legit kit, while still making it heavily based on the character models in the game. So this impression isn't 100%, but it's cool nonetheless. So before we actually start talking about the kit, I just want to give a little disclaimer. We are going to be back and forth from the studio and the field because we kind of got snowed out by some freak little blizzard that wasn't in the forecast. So just bear with us. So we're going to start out in the studio talking about the guns because, of course, Call of Duty is a first-person shooter, so you can't talk about the kit without talking about the guns. All right, so firstly, Call of Duty is a first-person shooter, and it is very gun-centric. So we're just going to get the gun out of the way, all right? So this is not a gun channel. This is more of a gear channel. So my gun is not like some exact copy of what we see in the game, but it's super close enough, and it's what I got. If you want a really good video on one of the guns from Modern Warfare 3, definitely check out Agent Espo on YouTube, and he does some really cool videos replicating the guns from, you know, Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3, even COD 4, and the Battlefield series, of course. That's where I first found him from, was his M16A3 clone from Battlefield 3. So he's super cool. If you want to go see the Modern Warfare 3 M4, check him out. But here today, I have my M16 impression from Modern Warfare 3. So in the game, the M16 is an M16A4. It is a flat top 20-inch M16 with the full stock and everything. The only difference is that has the plastic clamshell handguard with some Picatinny rails on it. I think it's super weird that the M16A4 with the CAC rails is in the older iteration of the title, and then the newer one, Modern Warfare 3, has the clamshell handguards. I think that's super strange. So this is my M16A4. The upper is a FN keyhole upper, and we have a 20-inch government profile barrel. Up here we have a Knight's Armament handguard with the rail covers, trying to get that look of like the slick clamshell handguard. Here we have an A2 full stock, and then on the lower we have an ergo grip and then a 20 rounder with a mag pull, kind of like what we see on the M4 in Modern Warfare 3. And the coolest part of this build is really the optics setup here. So what I have here is an EOTech EXPS. This is the 1-dot version. And behind it, we have a Samson 3.5 power magnifier. Now, the magnifier in the video game does not look like a Samson, but it does have a Samson mount, which is the mount that allows it to flip out of the way by depressing this little silver lever here. So once you press that, it's under spring tension and it's gonna flip out of the way. And that's super iconic. That was the first time in my life I ever saw a flip-to-side magnifier was in Modern Warfare 3 with the hybrid sight. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever, right? So the EOTech EXPS is cool as it is, but then having a flip-to-side magnifier that allows you to basically have a scope and a red dot all in one just blew my mind. Now, I did actually end up using this setup at the clone shoot, the 2025 clone shoot, and it was super duper cool. It's a really awesome optic setup. EOTechs are just awesome in general, especially with a magnifier behind them. And the 20-inch barrel is just an absolute beast, especially with some 55 grains screaming out of there. So this is definitely super cool. It's definitely not accurate to what Delta would be using. Delta is better known for using HK416s as well as Mark 18s, M4s. But you know, this is in the game and that's what I have here. So this is super cool and fun, and I just love M16s. Now, of course, swapping to your secondary is faster than reloading, and my secondary of choice is actually a 1911. This here is a Springfield operator. I love 1911s. I'm that guy, right? I love 20-inch barrels and rifle-length gas systems, and I love 1911s. Now, you might be thinking, well, the 1911 wasn't even in Modern Warfare, and you're kind of right. The 1911 was not in the multiplayer, but it was in the campaign. And you can see it when Price places the 1911 that was given to him by Soap on Soap's body when he dies. Every boy cried at that scene. So although it's not in the multiplayer, it is technically in the game, in the campaign. But overall, 1911s are super duper cool. I like them. And I've got it here on my belt line in a G-code holster, but we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Now, before we go any further, I do want to thank the sponsors of this video. The biggest one is going to be Venture Surplus. They are a huge supporter of the channel. They are one of the first places that I was buying legit kit from when I first started getting into this stuff. They have a really wide variety of stuff on their website, everything from tactical gear all the way to night vision accessories, as well as some really good cold weather and survival gear. So if you want to live out some really cool video game IRL moments with your friends, Venture Surplus has you covered. They also gave us a discount code, so if you use discount code KICKCREEP at checkout, you get 10% off your entire order. So I want to give a big thank you to Venture Surplus. Their links will be down in the description. I also want to thank Zulu24 Airsoft. They have a real soft spot in my heart because they were one of the first places that was able to help me play video games IRL. They have probably the best open play airsoft field in the Northeast. They even just did some renovations, making it look even cooler. And I want to thank them so much for letting me use their field for the opening intro, as well as some of the overview of this video. So huge shout out to Zulu24. Get out, play video games IRL there. They're awesome. All right, so we're gonna start tip to toes, I guess. So up on the head here, we are sporting OpsCore Maritimes. In the game, I do believe that they are just OpsCore fast high cut helmets. The Maritime's a little different because it's a little bit higher cut than the original Gen 1 fast helmets, but it's still the vibe. The only difference really is the fact that we didn't spray paint these things. They've got a little bit of like a dark black spray paint in the game, but there's absolutely no shot that I'm spray painting my Maritime. I'm sure you can feel the same way.
Yeah, just about.
The eyewear in the game. So in the game, I'm pretty sure that Sandman is sporting some Oakley M frames. So at first I thought that they were SI M frames, but if you look at the top of the glasses, you don't see those iconic ridges of the SIs. So I went online and I found the
equipment wiki, and someone said that they might be Wiley X PT1s. Now, I have Wiley X PT1s. They didn't look too similar. They seemed like the lenses were a little bit smaller than the PT1s. So then I figured, okay, maybe they are just the original Oakley 1999 M frames with the sweep lenses. But the sweep lenses looked a little too small. They didn't seem like they were the right shape. The strike lenses, the ballistic strike lenses make sense, but they just seem a little too square. And then I realized, oh, I think it's a blend of the sweep and the strike lenses, and that is the hybrid lens. So here I have the later generation hybrid lens, and the biggest difference is the fact that these lenses have the little hole in the center for the clip that secures them better. In the game, he has the older versions that do not have that. On some of the character models, we do see the Boley Tactical X800s up here on my buddy that I got. These are the Safe Face Grunt goggles. These are basically like a ballistic reproduction of the X800s. The Boley X800s are a staple of early 2000s Delta Force. You can see a lot of Delta guys sporting the Boley X800s. These Safe Face Grunt goggles just seem to be a reproduction of the Boley X800s. Biggest difference is they're a lot cheaper, and they also have the company name Safe Face all over them. So another character model that we see in the game, he is sporting the ESS NVG goggles, and that's what I have here. These ones are black, and they have the smoked out lenses, and they look very similar to one of the models that I found in the game. The funniest thing about the ESS NVGs in Modern Warfare 3 is that we do see the iconic little strap connector here on the side. So they definitely are ESS NVGs, but I'm guessing for copyright reasons, they didn't want to put ESS right here in the middle of the frame. So instead, they put the little vent holes that we see on the Revision Desert Locust, which I think is really funny. So this is another place where we see the blending of different products into one character model. In the video game, it looks like on their helmets, they are sporting a Surefire HL1 on one side of the helmet, and then some sort of flashlight on the other side. I couldn't ID what kind of flashlight it was. At first, I thought it was some sort of like Surefire Scout, but it has some knurling on the bezel, and then it also has a tail switch coming off it, which I'm not sure why there would be a tail switch coming off of a helmet-mounted light. I don't know what it is. I stopped guessing, so instead, I just have an Inforce Gen 1 weapon light, which I think is really cool. So, you know, sorry. On the back of the helmet, we do have an MS-2000 strobe, and that is there secured with some Velcro and tape. That's pretty iconic. We do see actual operators using that. The ear pro that they're wearing, this was actually really difficult for me to figure out what they had on, but what I decided on was either Liberator 2s or Liberator 3s with the headband and the neckband here. So this goes around the back of the head. This is where the wire routes through, and then we just have a little like harness up here on the top, and it fits very easily underneath something like a maritime or a fast helmet. Now you can get a true headband underneath a helmet like this, but I'm just going to go ahead and guess that because we do not see the iconic arc rail adapters in the game, maybe they were modeling it after the Liberator 2 or 3s with the neckband, and that's why we don't see the arc rail adapters. Now, the reason that I think that it's either Liberator 2 or 3s or maybe even MSA Swordins is because we don't see the boom mic coming off the bottom of the ear cup like we would see with, say, some Invisios or the Liberator 1s. There was also some speculation that they were running Comtac 1s, Peltor Comtac 1s in the game. The reason that I don't think that they are Peltor Comtac 1s is because Comtac 1s only have 2 buttons for turning them on and off and adjusting the volume and all that. The Liberator 3s that I have here have 3 buttons for adjusting volume and turning them on and off. And in the game, we do see that the character models are sporting some ear protection that have 3 buttons on them. So that's why I decided on the Liberator 3s. I think it makes the most sense. Now, in the game, I have no idea what that headlamp is. I looked really hard for a headlamp that has some sort of like pattern that's on the strap, and then also has like a Nexus buckle on the side there. And then I tried looking for lights that had a similar, you know, lens on it. I think it might be fictional. I think they just made it up, unless there's something that I'm missing. But essentially, Delta Force operators back in the day,
they were using a this old school Petzl headlamp that had a physical red lens that you would slide up and down. And those things are kind of hard to come by and also very expensive when you do find them. And they also don't have a buckle on them. So what I went with was a Petzl Tactica headlamp because it has a little buckle here on the side for being able to easily take it off, because if you're wearing a helmet and you have all this other stuff on, once it's around your neck, it's really not coming off. So it is nice that it has that little buckle there. And then that way you can have it fully off and you can use it for whatever you need to use it for. All right, so we're gonna move back out to the field and we're gonna talk about the uniform.
The top that I think that the Delta Force guys are wearing in Modern Warfare 3 is a Cry Precision Gen 1 top. Now, the reason why I think that it is the Gen 1 combat top is because they actually have zippered shoulder pockets on the character models. Like we see on the Army Custom and Navy Custom, the Gen 2 line of the Cry combat tops, they have a Velcro shoulder pocket up top, but on the Cry Gen 1, it is actually a zippered shoulder pocket. And we can see on the character models, they have this nice big square piece of loop tape for patches for their US flags and stuff. So that is why I think it is the Gen 1 top. The Gen 1 top is actually super cool. It's very different from the Gen 2 and Gen 3 tops. It's actually a twill fabric as opposed to ripstop like we see on this top here. And the other thing is the body of the actual top is a silk body. So it's a lot like the Under Armour material, that like silky sport top material, as opposed to the cotton body of the Army Custom, Navy Custom, and Gen 3s. So we were just talking about how in the game, it looks like they have the sand colored body of the Cry AC. So what I think what happened was they used the Gen 1 sleeves because the Gen 1 is super cool and it's super iconic. Delta Force basically made multicam what it is today. They were one of the first users of multicam, and they're one of the reasons why it's so cool and so iconic. And Delta guys get the coolest shit. So there were dudes running some of the earliest Cry combat sets. So it makes sense that the Delta guys are rocking something like a Gen 1. But the sand-colored body, the white body of the Army Custom, is also incredibly iconic. So I think it makes a lot of sense that they took the super cool Gen 1 sleeves, put them onto the iconic white body of the Army Custom, and then just made one super cool character model. All right, moving down to the bottoms. So now, because they're wearing some sort of like Gen 1, Gen 2 blend, and the game came out in 2011, it would make a lot of sense to me for them to wear Gen 1 or Gen 2 bottoms. But if we look at the character models in the game, they look kind of like G3s. But G3s actually came out the same year commercially as Modern Warfare 3. So I don't think that they were using G3s. The G3 was commercially released in summer of 2011. The game was released in fall of 2011. I would know. I was waiting in the line at GameStop. So if we look at the character model, they do have the iconic dip pockets. So I don't think that they're Gen 1s. The Gen 1s don't have the exact dip pocket of like the Gen 2s and the Gen 3s. They have something very different going on. But what the Gen 1s do have is multicam tweave, or this stretch material down here at the bottom. So to me, it kind of looks like in the game, they blended again the Gen 1 and the Gen 2s, the Army Custom pants, because they look a lot like the G2s, rocking the older style of Cry knee pad, but they don't have the Army Custom khaki tweave here. They have multicam tweave. And if you look at the equipment wiki, someone said that it might actually be the 2011 first gen of the Army Combat Pant. So what I have here is exactly that. These are the 2011 Army Combat Pant. These do actually have the dip pockets here. They have the multicams tweave, and they're fully multicam. They don't have the khaki tweave like we see on the Army Customs. But the biggest difference, the reason why I don't think that these are the pants in the game is, again, came out in 2011. They both came out in 2011, and I don't think that they had enough time to model these in. And the other thing is, on the character model, we see the bellows on the dip pocket that we see here on my Army Customs. On the Army Combat Pant, we don't see that on these. So that's why I think that they had some sort of G1, G2 blend top and a G1, G2 blend bottom. So that's my theory. Game theory. Is that copyright?
I think that's copyright.
I think that's copyright. And then, of course, they are sporting the older style of the Cry Combat knee pads here. These are one of the only fake things on my kit.
Something I've been noticing as of late, so Gen 2 knee pads, for some reason, decided that they were going to skyrocket within the last, like, 6 years.
Skyrocket in price.
Yeah, and they just decided that they were just going to vanish off the face of the earth. And now we're kind of at this point where no repro companies are really making Gen 2 knee pads at all. And so, like, if you want to buy a real set of Gen 2 knee pads, I've seen them go up all the way to like $90 for a set. Keep in mind, you can buy G3 surplus still in the bag for $15 off of eBay. I've done it before. I have like 3
I got
sets.
mine for $9.
Yeah, it's so radically different because how G3 has literally just become surplused out to everywhere, and like finding G2 stuff now is there's less and less surplus of it, and trying to get it for specific kits is now tremendously harder.
Yeah, so honestly, if you are trying to do an impression and you need some G2 knee pads, reproductions are your best bet, honestly, because I see a set of G2 knee pads on eBay right now for $150. I'm not spending close to the price of these pants on the fucking knee pads. That's just me, though. That's heinous.
So in the game, it looks like they're wearing some sort of synthetic mid-rise boot, which is a staple of Special Forces because they like things that are going to be much more high speed. And, you know, a synthetic, lightweight hiking boot definitely fits the bill. So here I have some Merrell Moab 2s. These things are a staple amongst the U.S. Special Forces because they're very comfortable and they're readily available. There's a lot of photos of Special Forces guys rocking the Merrell Moabs. But in the game, I think that they're rocking some sort of Salomon assault boot.
My buddy over here, he's got his Salomons. What are you wearing?
These are a pair of Salomon XA Ultras that I've had for probably a couple of years. Depending on what you're going for in terms of early kit, Salomons are always a solid choice. If you can get X Ultras at all, usually those are pretty kosher to what you'd be doing. You also have the Quest 4Ds. If you can get those are more of a higher boot if you're more of looking into getting into, if that's what you're comfortable with. Other boots that I would suggest for the time period are a Solo Fugitive GTXs were very popular for a higher riding mid boot. Moab 2 or 3s like my bud's wearing, or definitely looking at like Keens, Saloas, and other various type of hiking brands that are just a little bit in the mid tier, mid to higher tier. And if you can, Danners. Danners are always a big plus.
All right, so next up, let's talk about the drop legs that we see in the game. So here I have a Eagle RLCS drop leg. The reason why I settled on the Eagle RLCS is because it has the single strap. In the game, they have a single strap. I don't think it's the PARACLETE drop leg because it has 2 straps. So on the drop leg in the game, they have 2 pistol mags. It looks like there is a multi-tool and then a knife. So what I did is I went ahead and I put some S-Tac Kiwis on there for my 1911, and I got 2 of those. I have a PARACLETE open top pistol mag pouch with my Gerber multi-tool in there. And then I have a Glock field knife that I have gone ahead and mollied onto the side. I'm not sure exactly what make and model the knife is that's on their drop legs in the game, but this is the only knife that I could get onto a molly panel. So that's what I'm using. Now on my buddy here, I have an Eagle RLCS drop leg pouch, except here I have some Eagle RLCS 45 caliber open top pouches, and then an Eagle RLCS 9mm pouch that has a little, I think, Winchester multi-tool in there. So, like I said, you know, you can get the overall vibe of the character model without having exactly what they're wearing. It definitely looks the part. You can throw whatever knife you want on there. But this is what I went ahead and settled on for the overall vibe.
So like I said, Sandman's got his pistol mags and a knife and a toolkit on a left side drop-down pouch. I don't like drop leg pouches, so one is more than enough. So on my right side, what I got here is a G-code holster. So on Sandman's character model in the game, on his right side, he's got another drop leg panel that's got some double stacked ITW FASTmags on it. So that gives him a total of 4 mags down on a drop leg, which is fully loaded mags. So that's super heavy, super obnoxious. Now, of course, Sandman rocks his handgun up on his plate carrier. I hate that as well. I don't like chest-mounted holsters. I also don't like Serpa holsters, period. So instead of rocking a chest holster, which I hate, and wearing a drop leg holster, which I also hate, instead I got my 1911 in a little G-code holster here on my right side. For me, this makes sense. It works for me personally. And you know, switching to your pistol is faster than reloading. And of course, we have to talk about one of the most iconic pieces of kit in the game, which are the gloves. What I got here are the Oakley SI factory pilot gloves, and these are the old gen model. So at their core, they're really just riding gloves, right? Motorcycle or MX gloves. So if you take a bad slide, or if you whack your knuckle into something when you're going through trees, doing some downhill stuff, your knuckles aren't just going to get shattered. And I'm sure some guy at one point during the GWAT said, hey, these things aren't just good for riding, these are actually great for combat. And then they caught on, and then of course Oakley comes out with their standard issue line of them. These things are very iconic. You can see them in not just Modern Warfare 3, but a bunch of other video games. And if you look at reference photos of Army SF, Rangers, or CAG and Delta Force from the early 2000s, you see these Oakley gloves everywhere, whether it be the sand or khaki colored ones or the black colored ones. These things are just super cool, super iconic, and they really defined an era of kit. Now, it's really disappointing because these gloves are very hard to come by nowadays. People are trying to charge an arm and a leg for a used and battered pair of these things. I was able to get these things used for about 60 bucks, but when I go on eBay, I'm seeing them go for over $100, and finding them in your size is also borderline impossible. They look amazing, of course, but honestly, paying over $100 for something like this, not super worth it. But let me show you something that is. All right, so what I have here are the Wiley X CAG 1 gloves. These are actually a really awesome glove for the price. I got these things brand new off Poshmark for I think like 20 bucks. I typically see them going anywhere from between like $20 to $50, and they are definitely worth it. So these, again, are made by Wiley X. They're called the CAG 1s. I think that's really funny because, of course, Delta Force was referred to as CAG back in the early Global War on Terror. And these are, again, they're a riding glove, MX style glove. It's got the hard knuckles up here, and they have that really nice two-tone of black and tan, kind of like what we see on the Oakley gloves. So if you're going for that vibe of the old school Oakley factory pilot gloves, these things really do the job, and honestly, they're a better glove in my opinion. You get way better feel through the palm. They have honestly better feel than like mechanics gloves. They're leather, so they fit really, really tight, and then they break in really nicely. And I mean, I can keep these gloves on to like disassemble a firearm. I can do really fine tasks with these things. And the other cool part is the leather parts, of course, are fire retardant because leather is naturally fire retardant, but then the synthetic parts are actually made of aramid, and aramid is also fire retardant. So you have a fully fire retardant protective glove that's going to protect you not just from like scrapes and bashing your knuckles on something, but also from high heat, which you commonly find in a combat setting. I think they're super cool, and they're also in Ready or Not, and I use them all the time, so that's really fun. So next, we got to talk about the plate carrier. The plate carrier was honestly my favorite thing to build out for this video, just because I love playing with gear, and it was really cool just being able to play around with pouches, move things around, see if I could get it to look like what I'm looking at in the game, as well as doing some super sleuthing to figure out what each thing might actually be. So I used to think that the plate carrier that Delta Force is wearing in the game was some sort of Eagle carrier, like maybe Eagle MBAV or even the Eagle Ceres. But upon further squinting, I began to realize that I didn't think it was one of those. So I thought maybe it's just some weird like blend, some fictional carrier that they made up. It wasn't until I got this plate carrier that I began to realize what it might actually be. So what I have here is the PARACLETE RMV, or Releasable Modular Vest. So PARACLETE has the RAV, which is the Releasable Assault Vest, and then this here is the RMV. They look very similar, but all you gotta know is this is one of the most iconic plate carriers that were used by Delta Force in the early 2000s. If you look at reference photos of Delta Force all the way back when they're using BDUs and DCUs, or even when they're wearing early Cry multicam sets, they're rocking PARACLETE plate carriers, all right? And to me, it looks like this is what they're wearing in the game. Now, the biggest identifier is honestly this curve of the front plate bag going down here. In the game, it looks just like the geometry of the PARACLETE RMV or RAV. Now in the game, there are some extra buckles and straps that aren't present on the actual carrier. This might just be some like extra bits and bobs that the developers added for some flair just to make it look cool. But also users were known to modify their gear because that's one of the freedoms that Special Forces guys have, is that they're able to kind of do whatever they want to their gear. But again, the carrier in the game doesn't look exactly like the one I'm wearing here, but I definitely think it's some version of a PARACLETE plate carrier. So let's take this big heavy thing off and let's actually start talking about what I got going on here. Now, like I said before, this is a PARACLETE RMV, and one of the defining characteristics of the RAVs and the RMVs from PARACLETE is the fact that they have the zipper front cummerbund. Now, this thing is really big and really cumbersome, honestly. The front plate bag unvelcros like that, and there's a tiny little, belly band cummerbund underneath, so it's kind of a pain in the butt to actually get on, but it feels very secure. Now, these things do actually have soft armor that runs through the front plate bag up to the shoulders and then wraps around. And then, so we've got full coverage of soft armor, as well as being able to accept sappy plates in the front and the back. So this thing is fully armored, super duper heavy, but honestly, it wears very well. So another defining feature of the PARACLETE RMV or RAV is this big piece of the strip of loop panel up top here. That's for guys who usually put, their flag patches up here, IR flag patches. In the game, we do see that Delta Force is rocking a big old US flag up there on the front of their plate carrier. Also, they are rocking the TEA push to talk like we see up here. This is actually a repro of the old TEA push to talks. The one that they're using in the game is also what Delta Force was actually using way back when to hook up to all their embiters or whatever they might be using. So it's got this iconic little trapezoidal shape, and it's got a big rubber button up here, and then a big old dongle for your headset to plug into. So this repro is made by TCA. This is a Chinese reproduction of the TEA, and the thing is, it actually works. So if I take my TCI liberators here that I have, and I actually hook them up to my radio, check 1 2, check check, check 1 2. It actually works with the radios, and check 1 2, check check. Yeah, so I can receive and transmit using this here push to talk. So that is super cool. So if you are looking for a replica of a TEA push to talk, this TCA one here does actually work, and it is super cool. They also do have these little 2-prong thing over here for an actual just mic setup. That does actually work. I plug my Peltor directly into there, and you can just use the push to talk standalone without a headset if you just plug a mic in there. Another iconic look from the game is that the characters have the coiled wire running up their shoulder, and I have the same thing here. They have it secured with like some little straps, but I just chose to use the actual cable routers that we see present on the PARACLETE plate carrier here, and I have some rubber band here to secure that little dongle. Moving over to the right side, this is not actually on the character model in the game. I just thought that it looked cool. This here is a VIP strobe light. So this is kind of like back before, Hellstars or Mantis strobes. This is back when guys were using like just MS-2000s and stuff like that. So this is a little emergency strobe light. You can see it a lot on some older reference photos of Delta guys or even like Green Berets. They're really cool. They're super lightweight, and they just kind of clip onto anything, which I think is fun. And they just run off of a single CR123 battery. I just chose to put on here because, well, I just thought it looked cool. Staying up at the top, we do have a big, gigantic steel locking carabiner. In the game, we do see that Sandman has a big old carabiner on his kit. Carabiners are always just a useful thing. You can use them for a hasty rappel or snapping into a helicopter or something like that. This one that I have here is a Omega steel locking carabiner. This thing is absolutely ridiculous. This thing is rated for 53 kilonewtons. So if that means anything to you, you know that is absolutely insane. Now in the game, he does have it on his right side. When I put it on my right side, it kind of like got in the way of my buttstock, so it is now on my left side. And the other thing about the PARACLETE is that because it is a releasable vest, it has this little pillow here on the side. Now if you grab that and you rip it away, it's going to make the vest release. The whole thing will actually just fall apart using this clever little mechanism that's in the back here behind the back panel. So in the game, Sandman has 3 of these, tan mag pouches that are going across his front. So I didn't know what those were at first. I thought they just might be like some soft bungee top, tan molly thing. I wasn't sure exactly what they were. But upon further squinting, I realized that they're actually ITW FASTmags. Now, if we look really closely, we can actually see the little bungee cords coming off the mag pouches in the game. Those are there for some extra retention because these are open top mag pouches. So these are polymer or plastic, and they use some friction to keep the mags tight inside of there. Now, Sandman does have 3 going across, but they're actually double stacked. So the issue with that is seeing the bungees there means that these are probably like Gen 2 ITW FASTmags, right? So if you see that bungee, that means that they can't actually double stack. So here I have a little airsoft repro of the Gen 3 or 4 ITW FASTmags, and as you can see, they double stack here. If I undo these little rubber tabs, I'm able to separate them. So the later generations are able to double stack, but the later generations don't have that little piece of bungee there. So that being said, I only have 2 of them, right? Because that's what I could get my hands on. But I didn't want to just have 2 mags on my carrier, right? Because Sandman, of course, has 3 double stacked ITW FASTmags, giving him 6 magazines. So what I chose to do was I have this triple fuzzy shingle here on the front. So PARACLETE did make a little Velcro little shingle that was able to Velcro and sandwich in between the carrier, the front plate bag, and the cummerbund. But this here is not actually the PARACLETE fuzzy shingle. This is actually made by SOE Gear. If I'm remembering correctly, I'm pretty sure this is just a one-off item that was made by SOE Gear for an FBI dude way back in the day. I think that that is super cool. It is still fairly authentic because, well, it is made by a real company, and also PARACLETE did actually make a fuzzy shingle just like this. Now, again, this being a PARACLETE plate carrier and, Delta Force iconically using the PARACLETE pouch suite, that is what I've chosen to use all around here. So basically everything on here except for the ITW FASTmags, as well as the radio pouch on the back that we'll get to, is going to be PARACLETE, all right? In the game, we do actually see some little tags on some of the pouches, some little brand tags, and to me, they kind of look like Tactical Tailor tags. I don't even know if it is actually Tactical Tailor. I don't know if they just did that for funsies, but what I did was I chose to put PARACLETE pouches on the PARACLETE plate carrier because that makes sense to me, and they look very close to what we see in the game. So staying on the front, they do have a big old embedder pocket on the front for a big old brick radio, and I already have a big old embedder on the back here. So we'll talk about that in a bit, but basically I didn't want to have 2 big old brick radios on this carrier. I wanted to have a little bit more variety. So what I chose to do was I have a little PARACLETE universal radio pocket here, and inside of it is a small little Baofeng DMR radio. It's basically a replica of the Anytone DMRs. Now the radio pouches in the game have these 2 straps going across them. They have like an open face thing. So I kind of got that vibe using this PARACLETE universal radio pouch with the strap going across the front, and then we got a little buckle. So I kind of think of this little radio here on the front as like a squad level radio, and then the big old radio on the back I kind of think of as the radio that they would be using to talk to command, right? Like talking to Overlord, or communicating, of course, with aircraft, calling in a sick AC-130 or a chopper gunner and just absolutely slime the rest of the team. So that was a little bit of artistic freedom that I chose to take with this setup, just because I wanted to be cohesive, and I just wanted to add a little bit more variety. And then next to that, we have a little zippered general purpose pocket. So this is, again, a PARACLETE general purpose zippered pocket. This is the GP small pouch, but it looks a little different from the one that we see in the game. The general purpose pouch that we see on Sandman's kit in the game, it has Molly on the front there. And again, that might be some like Tactical Tailor thing that they mocked up. because it's got that little tag on there. But again, I want to put PARACLETE on the PARACLETE plate carrier, so that's what we have here. The thing with these small GP pouches is that it doesn't have MOLLE going across the front. Now, the PARACLETE GP Tall does have some MOLLE on the front there, and then also the PARACLETE IFAK pouch or first aid pouch does also have a MOLLE going across the front, but I just kind of wanted to get as close to, you know, what they were going for in the game. I didn't care that there was no MOLLE on this little zipper pouch, so that is just what I went with, right? And then next to that, we have some flashbang pouches. So here are a couple of PARACLETE flashbang pouches. In this one, I have a little Enola Gay smoke grenade, fits those super, super well. And then in here, I actually have a little tag-in flashbang grenade. This is the FBG4. These things are cool. They're fairly loud. They're not really the best thing in the world, but they're definitely cool. All right, coming back around to this side, here we have a PARACLETE 19-round shotgun pouch. So this thing is super cool. They're very iconic. You can see Delta guys back in the day rocking these things. Now, if you are running a shotgun in Modern Warfare 3, the character model does have some shotgun shells going across the front. You can see some like red and blue shells there. Looks very cool. So that's kind of what I did here, right? So instead of having 3 ITW FASTmags going across the front, instead I decided to go with this for a little added flair, kind of like what game developers do. The cool thing about these is that you have shotgun shells on the front, and then you will also have them on the inside when you open them up, and you also have a little button snap. So that way you're able to have a lot of variety of different loads depending on what you're doing. So you could have breaching shells on the front, you could have buckshot here on this little tab, and then you could have slugs going down here. It's very cool, it's very versatile. Honestly, it doesn't work that great for, you know, actually holding shotgun shells, because as I was filming the video, these elastic little bands here, they don't really hold the shotgun shells too well. So I was having some shotgun shells falling all over the place, which sucks.
All right, so first we're gonna start. What the fuck just, oh my God, a fucking shotgun shell fell out. These fucking PARACLETE pouches suck. Pre-MSA, bro. I got a shout out for pre-MSA.
Yo, blue Velcro, bro.
Blue Velcro. Blue Street. Oh my God, like 5 people are gonna understand that.
And then next to that, we have a PARACLETE frag grenade pouch. And on the inside, we have a little airsoft fragmentation grenade, a little Enola Gay fragmentation grenade. And that lives right there. And the other thing is, when you're playing on the controller, the left bumper controls your non-lethal throwables, and then the right bumper controls your lethal throwables, right? So your frag grenades are with the right bumper, your flashbangs are with the left bumper. And that's basically how I set this up here. Frag grenades are on the left side, and then flashbangs are on the right side. Now, of course, the right bumper is what throws the lethal, but we have flashbangs on the right side, and then the left bumper throws the non-lethals, but we have frag grenades on the left side. The reason that I did that is because I kept all of the lethal things, the very fast lethal things, on the left side, and all of the slower, not as urgent, non-lethal things on the right side. So I can keep my firing hand on the gun, and my support hand is able to reload my rifle, reload my shotgun, because of course in the game the shotguns are using buckshot, not breaching rounds, and then I'm also able to throw my frag grenade. So lethal is all on the left side together. And then on the right side, when I do have to drop my weapon, sling it, I have non-lethal, not as urgent things like a radio, general purpose pouch, which might have like some snacks or some cold weather gear, and then the flashbang grenades. So that's the reason why I set it up that way. This is a SOP that some units have where they keep all their lethals together and non-lethals together just to make it easier remembering what's going to be on which side. I think it's cool, and that's the reason why I chose to go with this. So, and also not as cool, but I do have some trauma shears here behind the frag grenade pouch, just because those are a good thing to have in case you get shot. All right, so moving on to the back of the plate carrier. Now back here, this is a zip-on back panel. So this can be swapped out with different things, but the way that we see it hooked up in the game is big old embedder here, and then we have a big old horizontal GP pouch at the bottom. That's kind of like what we see on Sandman's kit. That's the way that I kitted it out here. Here is where I have the big old brick radio. This thing is actually a Baofeng reproduction of a Prick 152. So with this little buckle in here, And this strap, able to pull that out. So this is a tactical tailor embedder pouch. I thought it looked pretty similar to what we see in the game. Not sure if it's actually what they modeled it after, but we do see the screen of the radio, kind of like what we see in the game. We have that strap kind of thing going on here, and then we have a nice big buckle to keep it in place. And of course, we have that coiled wire coming off of the push talk and is plugged into the radio. And in the game, looks like they got a big old whip antenna, but here I've got like the donkey dick antenna. Now, this horizontal GP pouch is what made me think, okay, maybe a lot of these pouches are based off of like PARACLETE stuff, because of course, PARACLETE has a big old wide GP pouch. And down here, I've just got some random things. I have some like chemical, biological gloves, because of course there is a mission in the game where you're fighting through like, I think France, and there's a bunch of like, you know, chemicals all over the place. So I've got some really nice sea-burny gloves that I got from Venture Surplus, as well as the liners. I've got the Peltor hookup for my M45 gas mask. We'll talk more about that in a bit. And then I also have a Camelback gas mask adapter shoved inside of here too. So that's what I got going on inside of here. This big old GP pouch is really kind of like a tiny little day pack. You know, I'm sure you could throw some snacks or some water in there. Now, something that we do not see on the plate carrier is a medical pouch, but I'm not going to cry about it because, you know, it seems like you can just heal from getting shot by a 50 cal pretty easily in the game, so it doesn't seem like they need it. But aside from that, pretty cohesive setup. So it's really cool looking in retrospect at a game that I grew up playing and just understanding, you know, how much thought and effort that they put into such a cool game. So I think that that's really cool. So that's enough for the plate carrier. So let's move on to something else.
So one of the coolest parts about older video games that actually use legit kit is that you don't even need the exact make and model of the gear that they're wearing in the game to get the overall vibe of the character model. So if you want to look like your favorite character, you can get pretty close without needing the exact PARACLETE RMV and the exact pouch and this, that, and the other thing. So here, my buddy is outfitted with a Cry Army custom top, basically, more or less. So here we have a Ranger Green RV, and I've outfitted him with some pouches, got him a little radio, kind of like what we see. It's got the two straps here, some fake ITW FASTmag pouches, and on the back here, I don't have the rear plate bag, but I do have a 3F supply map pack that I've clipped on here. If you saw my video on the map pack, you'll know how I got that on. So really cool. So although this is not really what they were modeling the character models after, it looks very close to the part. And the same thing here, if you look at his hands, he does have some hard knuckle motorcycle kind of gloves, but these are the Wiley X CAG ones. Here, the radio pouch that I have on him, when I was trying to figure out what radio pouch they were using in the game, I settled on the Embedder V2, and that's because it has these two straps going across the front, like we see on the character models in the game. After doing some real squinting and noticing that you can see the display of the radio, I kind of decided against the Embedder V2, and that's why I settled on the Tactical Tailor Embedder pouch.
All right, so the last thing that I want to talk about is going to be the gas mask. Now, if you don't remember, gas masks were actually a pretty important plot driving device in Modern Warfare 3. There is a mission when you're in the streets of France, I'm pretty sure, and you meet up with like the GIGN, and you are wearing a gas mask the whole time because there is some sort of, you know, CBRN event, some sort of toxic nerve agent, I forget what it was, that was released in the streets of Europe. So in the game, you are wearing an Avon M50 with the actual cheek filters, not the C50 with the 40 millimeters. And the M50s are super cool. They were pretty new at the time, so it makes sense that they put the new cool hotness in the game. But I have something here that I think actually would have been even cooler if they used this. So here I have a PARACLETE gas mask pouch with a PARACLETE drop leg panel here. And on the inside of this, I have a gas mask that Delta was most well known for using. This here is the M45 gas mask. So the M45 is an iconic gas mask that they were using way back in the early GWAT. There's a lot of really cool reference photos of Delta Force guys using these things because, of course, back then everyone was scared of, you know, dirty missiles and nerve agents. So I do totally understand why they use the M50 in the game. Again, it was the new hotness. Let's put that in the game. But I think it would have been really, really cool had they put this in here. The other thing is that there are a lot of reference photos of Delta Force operators using their M45s with the C420 Papper blower system. Now that is a MOLLE mounted blower system that you can mount two 40mm CBRNE filters to, and then it has a hose that goes into the gas mask that allows you to have a positive air pressure, I think it's called, where it sucks air through the filters and pumps it directly into your gas mask. That way you can run a marathon in a gas mask and not get winded because you're not working harder to pull air through that filter, kind of like how I have it here. I think that it is such a cool setup. I think it looks sick as hell. I'm a little disappointed that that wasn't in the game, but again, I totally understand, but can you imagine? So yeah, the M45, super cool, super iconic, but not in the game, but it is legit and it is super cool. So that just about does it for this video. I hope you guys liked watching. I know I had a ton of fun making this video as well as building out this kit. It was super cool just having a deeper and deeper appreciation for a video game that's over a decade old at this point. I'm a huge geardo, huge gearhead, and it got better and better the more pieces of the puzzle that I was able to put together. I know that a lot of you guys watching love video games and/or are giant gearheads, so I hope you guys enjoyed seeing it, watching it, and you know, just taking a close look at some really cool pieces of kit. I also want to thank anyone that sold me some of this kit. You probably know who you are if you're taking a close look, but I hope you guys had fun. I know I did. I also want to give a huge thank you to Venture Surplus as well as Zulu24 Airsoft. Their links are down in the description along with that discount code. So if you couldn't tell, I like to talk about tactical gear in the warmer months, and then I kind of get more into the winter mountaineering and ice climbing in the colder months. So as we transition into the colder months, we'll start talking more and more about the PCU system. The level 5 video is on the way. Don't worry, I saved the best for last. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Thank you again, and I will see you in the next one.